Today I am making shrimp scampi pizza for dinner. So as you just heard, my oven just finished preheating. So that's going to be preheated at 425. At the beginning of this video you'll see screenshots of the ingredient list that I'm working off of, and then my basic ingredients that I'm using. I've actually pulled a couple other things since then because I noticed that they don't season their shrimp before putting them on here. There's no salt, no pepper. Again, what is up with these recipes and no salt? I don't understand. Okay, but anyway, so this recipe also calls for you can make your own pizza dough. I am totally cheating and using Pillsbury pizza crust because I don't much feel like making homemade dough today. I've done it once and I'm pretty good at it, I think. I made some homemade Hot Pockets. I liked it. I just don't feel it. I'm not feeling it today. So I'm going to follow the instructions on here first because this always says to pre-bake it first for a little while. And actually, should be at 400, but we're going to go with the recipe and keep it at 425. And I'll just basically leave it in the oven just a little bit shorter of a time than they say. So you can see I've got the rectangle one. I'm just going to lay it out on my cookie sheet. I'm going to kind of stretch it out. You are definitely more than welcome to make your own dough. Like I said, I've done it before. It's not super hard, but if you're not thinking about it and all of a sudden it's an hour until you're supposed to have dinner ready, you're not making homemade dough. Sorry, just not happening. You have to let that stuff rise and sit. Okay. So I've got my dough on my pan. So I'm going to just go over to my recipe, see if they say anything specific about what to do. This is a very, very easy recipe tonight, especially using pre-made dough. I'm also using large shrimp, and I actually have 2 pounds. So I'm going to just use all of it because why not? I like shrimp scampi, I like pizza. This all seems like a very good mix for me. Okay, so I'm actually going to season up my crust just a little bit before I put it into pre-bake. So basically all I do with this is I usually just throw like a little garlic salt on it or just some salt and pepper. Just something to let the crust have a little bit of flavor. So I'm going to grab my garlic salt. And I'm not putting a lot here. I'm literally just going to sprinkle a little bit over the whole base of it. So not a lot, but I want enough that when you bite into the crust that hopefully you'll taste that little bit of garlic salt. So I'm going to throw this in the oven for about 6-ish minutes and I'm going to check it and see what it looks like. Okay, so next I'm going to season up my shrimp. I don't know if you can tell, but miraculously my pizza crust has arrived. Funny, my battery decided to die on my camera about 4 minutes in. So I was going to prep all this while my dough was pre-baking in the oven, but instead it's just going to get a chance to cool and relax while we prep everything else. This still wouldn't take very long, so I'm not too worried about it. So like I said, I've got my 2 pounds of shrimp, as I try and dump it out on the counter. I'm just going to season these up with a little bit of salt, a little bit of pepper. I'm going to throw some dried parsley flakes in here and some minced onion. The recipe, as I mentioned at the beginning, doesn't call for seasoning the shrimp. I'm the big proponent of seasoning your meat. So we're going to go ahead and do that. I've got 2 pounds in here, so keep that in mind. I'm going to throw some salt. Grind up some pepper. And this goes back again to season it until you think it's where you would like it. I always try and go just over that little uncomfortable threshold for myself, especially when it comes to salt, because I tend to, for some reason, not ever put enough salt. Apparently I have a brand new parsley flake bottle, so that's fun. So not too much in there. I'm not a huge fan of parsley, but it's a fun color. And we're going to throw some of the minced onion in there. Again, not too much. We're just going to mix all of that by hand, make sure everything gets a nice little peak of the seasoning. It all gets evenly distributed. You can smell that dried minced onion. It smells so yummy. And again, if you're a texture person with your hands, you can definitely use a spoon or a spatula or something else. I just really like getting my hands in here to be able to see what my seasonings are doing. All right, so you can kind of see my shrimp all have a nice little bit of green, a little bit of black specks. You can smell a little bit of salt on there and all the little garlic flakes. So I'm gonna go wash my hands, and then we're gonna come back and I will slice up my red onion, and then we will actually start putting all of this fun stuff together. Okay, so we're back, and if you have watched any of my previous videos, you've seen that I've been working off this one red onion. I'm gonna actually finish this baby off tonight for the pizza. So I'm just gonna go ahead and cut off around that middle section. Take off that outside layer. And then you'll see we're not left with too much here, but it should be enough, I think, for the pizza. So I'm just gonna slice these up pretty thin. You can slice these, you can dice them. I'm gonna keep them as nice big slices because I really, really like having that little bit of crunch of red onion. But I'm also doing them thin enough where they should cook actually pretty quickly on top of the pizza. Move those over. And we'll go to this one. Alright, so we've got our onion done. So what this is telling me to do is go ahead and spread about 3 tablespoons of pesto. There come the tears. Woo! I am actually going to just probably spread as much of this as I can. So I'm going to kind of push around my crust with my middle fingers just to actually kind of give it a little bit of a ledge so I don't have to worry about my toppings going outside of this. You don't have to do this. I just figured I want to try it and I want to see if it works. A lot of cooking is experimentation. So you want to try something? Try it. It's your kitchen. It's your food. Alright, so now I've gotten a nice little ring here. I'm going to open up my pesto. I'm just going to take this by the spoonful and just spread this pretty evenly as you can over that whole inside. I'll even get a little bit up in that ridge. But put as much or as little pesto as you like. I love the flavor of pesto. I love the basil and garlic, and I love me a good pesto. So because this is also the only sauce on your pizza, you want to make sure that you definitely have enough where every bite's going to have a little bit of that sauce. You don't want somebody biting into just, you know, a chunk of oil. See, I almost used the whole jar. I've got a little bit left. I'm probably going to hold on to that and maybe kind of drizzles a little bit over my shrimp just to add a little bit of extra once we have all the toppings on. So just spreading that out nice and evenly. Stick that to the side. So now it's telling me to go ahead and put my cheese. Yes? Yes. And go ahead and put a layer of mozzarella. Now the cheese, I don't mind it going up over my edge because then you kind of, when the cheese starts melting on your edges, you'll get like a little cheesy crust, and that's always fun. And this again, I think calls for like 2 cups or 2 to 3 cups, I think, of cheese. Use your judgment. If you like super cheesy pizza, add more cheese. If you don't really like cheese too much, don't add so much. This has 4 cups total in this bag. I'll probably honestly wind up using all of it, and if not all of it, it'll be pretty dang close. So you can see I still have a little bit of the pesto kind of poking through this layer of cheese. But it's all good. So I've got probably about half of that on there right now. Now I'm going to go ahead and throw something to arrange the shrimp and onion. So I'm going to go ahead and arrange my shrimp. And you can either just plop them on here or just arrange them nicely like I am because I'm a little crazy and I have 2 pounds instead of 1 pound of shrimp, so pretty sure that this will go pretty far. So I'm just going to put these in a nice little line. So I'm going to finish this up. I'm going to throw the onions on top, and then we'll come back and we'll we'll mince the onion on top, and then we'll probably drizzle a little bit more pesto on top, do a little bit more cheese on top, and then we will stick it in the oven from there. So when we come back, you'll see a nice little pretty pizza that we'll just have to do the last little bit of touches to. Okay, so we're back, and you can see now that I've got my shrimp on here, I've got my onion on here. I wound up using probably about 90% of the shrimp, and then I've wrapped up my leftovers and gone ahead and put them in the fridge. And same with my onion, I probably only used about 1/3 to 1/2 of what I actually chopped up over here. So those are also back in my fridge. What's great about those, as long as in the next 24 hours or so, I can either have leftovers tomorrow for lunch if I have any pizza left, or I can throw the already flavored shrimp with the red onion and some butter in a pan and just make myself a shrimp scampi tomorrow. So always think about that. Don't freak out if you overdo it on ingredients, or if you have all of these leftovers, even a little bit of leftovers. I'll make myself some tacos. Just use everything that you can. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to chop up my garlic instead of mincing it on here. So I'm going to just do like little slices, and I'm going to just spread them out, and I'm going to chop enough until I feel like I have a good amount on here. So when I come back, I will let you know about how many cloves I actually wound up using. The recipe calls for about 2 to 3. Most likely, especially knowing me, I'll use more than 2 to 3. Okay, so we're back. I used about 5 cloves of garlic. I cut them all pretty thin as I could basically get them. So I don't know if you can tell just quite how thin that is. But I do it thin enough where I know that they'll at least get cooked a little bit through, so I'm not just biting into raw garlic on a pizza, because that's also awful. Another tip that you can do is you can actually slice them up like this and then just saute them in a small pan with some oil or butter for just a little bit till they start to smell like garlic cooking, and then remove them from the heat, and then you can put them on your pizza from there too. I've done it both ways. It works both ways, honestly. This just turns out a little bit crunchier, and if you're not a fan of the flavor of a raw-ish garlic, I suggest definitely pre-doing them or mincing your garlic, because then it will cook a lot faster. So I've pulled off all the leaves from, I think, 2 parsley sprigs, and I'm just going to do a quick chop through these. Just enough so I can just kind of spread it out over on top. So we can see it's not like crazy, but just want to sprinkle that over the pizza. Personally, I'm not a huge fan of the flavor of parsley, but when it's being cooked in with meats and garlic and salt and butters and things like that, then it's not so shabby then. Alright, so we can see we've got that. Isn't it pretty? It almost looks like a potato pizza that I did before, I think just because of the raw shrimp. So I'm going to drizzle just a little bit more pesto, just kind of over on top. Nothing crazy. Just kind of, literally just kind of drizzle it all around. Don't worry about it being perfect or being messy. Even like, since my spoon shaking skills obviously aren't great. use my finger and just kind of go around the pizza and just a little more spoonful. Like I said, I'm not putting like a whole crazy layer of pesto back on top of everything, but just to bring that pesto flavor on top and let it kind of cook in with some of the shrimp. Plus the oil, if you get it in with that garlic, will help that garlic cook a little bit more too. Will help your garlic to get a little more tender if you decide to put it on raw like I did. Okay. Pesto. Alright. So, I'm going to throw my pesto in my fridge because I'm weird and that's where I like to put my pesto after it's open. And then I'm going to sprinkle another just quick layer of cheese on top. Again, you can do another real thick layer if you want. You can do a thinner layer. Good thing about this is shrimp cooks so fast that you shouldn't have to worry too much even if you put a super thick layer of cheese. Obviously, play with this recipe, so if you notice that you put a really thick layer once and your shrimp in the middle of the pizza for some reason didn't cook all the way, just throw it back in the oven for a couple minutes. Also, when you reheat something like this, please put it in the oven. Pizza reheated in a microwave is so gross. Alright, so I'm not going to do a crazy thick layer, just making sure that every little bit has some cheese on it. So you can see I've probably used about 3 cups. So, okay, so we're going to put this back in the oven. And this says to bake it for 15 to 20 minutes or until the cheese starts to brown a bit on the top. So basically what we're going to do is I'm going to stick it in there for about 15 minutes. I'll check on it and then I'll just go from there. I usually start checking every 2 to 3 minutes after that just to see. I want to make sure first of all that like my crust out here doesn't get super burned, but I also want to make sure that my center gets nice and cooked all the way through. This is why pre-baking this particular crust is so important, because if I've done it before where the very first time I cooked with this pizza crust, I didn't know I was supposed to pre-bake it, and it wound up being super raw in the middle, and there was really nothing I could do except eat the outside edge and then throw the middle back in the oven. So make sure you always follow those kind of directions. They are there for a reason. So we're going to throw this in the oven, and then once it's all done, I'll let you know for sure what the total time was that I wound up keeping it in there. You'll see the picture of my final product, and then the review will be put up on if I think this is a keeper recipe or not. So I hope that you enjoyed tonight's recipe. This is super easy. Anybody can do this any time of night. You can do this with kids. You can do this with your spouse. Do different toppings. That's what's so fun about this. So thank you again for subscribing. Hope to see you next time.